Yeah. Hi, I'm Tommy Mitchell.
I'm Tomas Gonzalez, and here are our guests.
My name is Sasha.
And I'm Saanvi.
And the goal today is to talk about sleep when it comes to people our age. So, memory, studying, the effects of napping, caffeine, everything.
Yeah.
And so, we're both taking Psychotherapy with Dr. Walker. You two aren't. So, we just wanted to just have a chat about it. If you could start with your sleep schedule, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, so I'd say like the 7 days of the week, I get on average 8.5 hours of sleep every night, which is pretty solid.
I think I tend to get a consistent 7 to 9 hours.
And I'm closer to around 6 to 7.
I feel, I'm more like you, unfortunately, despite taking this class. I struggle a bit and I go like a week or two just consistently sleeping for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself feeling super drowsy during the day?
No, honestly, no, not that much.
Or you were gonna say something?
I don't feel too drowsy, but then around afternoon, then I start to crash. I become much more tired. But during the day, I feel fine.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. Or in lecture, I recall learning that like our subjective sense of like how tired we are. It's pretty inaccurate, like when you compare it to an actual like standardized measure, right? Like people are pretty bad at telling how energized or tired they are, and something that we learned during the class is that like the objective way to measure like how tired someone is through using the psychomotor vigilance test. This test kind of, or like the premise of it is that participants are given like some sort of stimuli, and this test tries to measure the amount of times the participant like misses the stimuli itself.
Yeah.
And the cause of these like misses are because of micro sleeps, and my friend Tom is going to explain them.
Yeah, micro sleeps are problematic because it's literally just completely disconnecting from the world for like a second or two. And for example, if you're driving, this is a big problem. Like, when you're drinking and driving, as bad as it is, at least you are aware of what's going on and your inputs are delayed. That's the problem. When you have a micro sleep, you just fall asleep. When you're going like 70 miles an hour on the highway, that can be the reason for a crash. So it's extremely dangerous, but of course, I mean, it affects much more than just driving, as bad as that is. But the truth is that even after just 2 weeks of sleeping for 6-7 hours on a short-term basis, that doesn't sound like that bad. But just 2 weeks gives you like the equivalent of pulling an all-nighter, that equivalent of tiredness, as measured from by the PVT test, as the number of microsleeps. So you might feel less bad than as if you pull an all-nighter right now, but in terms of your responsiveness and the amount of microsleeps you have, it's actually just as bad. And if you sleep, for example, for 5 days straight for 4 hours, then that's the same thing. So only 5 days of sleeping 4 hours is equivalent of pulling an all-nighter.
Like I feel it's very easy as college students to like disregard the importance of sleep, right? Or it's very easy for us to say, like, oh, I have like a test to study, or I have this social event, so I would rather just sleep like 7 to 6 hours. You think like, oh, it's okay, it's like close enough to 8 hours. But as Tommy says, like if you deprive yourself even for an hour, like it eventually builds up, and it can equate to like depriving yourself of sleep, of like an entire night of sleep after 2 weeks, which is quite an impressive stat, I'd say.
Do you guys often find yourself sacrificing sleep for like studying purposes?
No, not much. When I have an exam, I make sure to get the full sleep.
That's good. What about you, Sam?
As a college student, especially now towards the end when we have finals, I do find myself just pulling all-nighters to study for the exam the night before.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very common pattern. A lot of people do this. I used to do this. Actually, this class, what has really made me stop doing that for the following reason. Like, we learned that sleeping actually benefits your memory. It makes you remember things better than staying awake. And you can go into like why, like when it comes to, because different stages of sleep actually contribute to different parts of like memory.
I'd say it was like one of my favorite parts of the course, like learning how the different stages of sleep, like Tommy says, affect different types of memory and how they like consolidate and reinforce themselves. I feel like as college students, we really prioritize like fact-based memory, right? Like trying to memorize a curriculum or like study before a test. So just to give you like a bit of context, or first to state the fact, like for fact-based memories, it is important to like get our slow wave sleep.
Mhm.
So what is slow wave sleep? Basically, humans, like, you can divide our sleep like periods into 4 stages of non-REM, and then there's like REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement. And slow wave sleep consists of the 3rd and 4th phases, and it basically represents like the deepest stages of sleep. So it's you have most of these during the first quarter of the night. It's like the most prolonged periods of this. And in order to consolidate this, like all of the information that we learn during the day, right, when you're studying, it's really important to get that slow wave sleep. But I don't know, like, if any of you guys play instruments or have like something procedural, Sasha.
No, I do. I play the piano, and I feel that when I'm trying to learn a piece and I go through a full night's sleep, it just comes to me much quicker than you.
Yeah, or like I also play the piano, and it was like one of my, like, back when I was younger, I had like more time to practice, right? And it was like one of my favorite things. Like I would be really invested in learning a piece, right? And even though I would practice for 2 to 3 hours, and then like before falling asleep, I'd be still playing it slow, kind of messing up, and it'd be the excitement of going to bed, like sleeping for 8 hours and waking up the next morning,
knowing
it's just like perfect, right? Like it's gonna be.
Is that that's procedural memory?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is different from fact-based. And the thing is, sleep is so beneficial to all kinds of memory. So yeah, like an instrument or a sport or something, the movements that you do that are enhanced by sleep. That's procedural memory.
Yeah.
The facts, like, you know, studying or going to a lecture and trying to remember information and then sleeping, that's fact-based memory. That's benefited by slow wave sleep. But then there's also just the overall thing of connecting the dots between something that you learned today and something that you learned like a while back. And that is generally handled much more by non-REM sleep. By REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement sleep, which is also the time when you dream.
Oh yeah.
And so like that is very critical because, for example, you know, in an exam when you're tested on stuff that's not only related to like one particular concept, but just to everything that you know learned in the course, it's very important to have your brain consolidate this way, like in sort of like a global way, and that's what REM is responsible for. It's not just remembering the facts that you learned in the short term, but just connecting them with everything that you learned before.
Or I feel something like, or at least when we were younger, or at least in my case, I feel like our tests were more like fact-based, or like, oh, what was like
just
the capital of this,
recalling,
recalling, which was fact-based. But as Tommy says, it is like quite important, especially during REM sleep, like when this like integration happens with the rest of our like existing knowledge, like. Now when we're tested on things, like it's probably like combine this idea from this topic from this topic. And in class we covered like a couple of experiments that like just measure that how REM sleep like can help with creativity and like just abstracting these like patterns between the different types of knowledge. So it's quite interesting how like the different stages of sleep can contribute to like the different and just I think we didn't mention it, but like for procedural, like playing piano, for example, or riding a bike. Interestingly enough, like the parts of like the sleep cycles that contribute to this, it's like early in the night you want the slow wave sleep, and then you want the REM sleep late in the night. So it feels pretty disjoint, but like the science dictates that both of those stages are quite beneficial to like procedural based memory.
Okay.
Yeah, and then. There's also the problem with a lot of college people is that they do start, you know, taking substances, and stuff like weed completely ruins your REM sleep. And you know, you might think, oh, it's not too bad, but as we talked about, you know, even though like memory is just remembered, like properly consolidated in slow wave sleep, all the connections happen in REM sleep, and basically, you know, something like weed or other drugs, basically all like drugs that's not caffeine, just destroy your REM sleep. I don't know if you know of any.
Yeah, actually, what do you mean by destroyed?
It greatly reduces, and then it also affects your dreams a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, because of course,
that's true. Because
dreams.
I have some friends who take weed pretty regularly, and then when they stop, let's say for 2 weeks or a week, their dreams become extremely vivid.
Oh, it's like a rebound effect.
And then they remember everything. They have like insane visualizations.
No, and it's something that we've covered in class, and it applies to a lot of drugs and substances that so while you're taking it, or like the effect that we learned with especially like weed, it's that like while you're consuming it like on a daily basis or like in high frequencies, is you're gonna get deprived of like your REM sleep, but then like your brain and your body's like it's desperate for that REM sleep, right? Because it's getting deprived of it. So the second you stop consuming this substance, like we even learned in class that it's quite rare for humans to go directly like when you fall asleep like straight into REM sleep.
Because usually it's like one of the later stages.
Yeah. So you first have to go like through stage 1, like.
And you usually dream later in the night because of that.
Can these stages like intertwine, or is,
Yeah,
is there
or
always a
it's-
1, 2, 3, 4?
It's like the common pattern is there's a very like defined graph that it's
Yeah.
like for most of the population, but it's like one of the exceptions that we learned about is like when you deprive yourself a lot of one type of sleep, for example, the REM sleep,
Yeah.
like by consuming substances. Once you stop taking the substance, it's like people have like, or like scientifically they've measured like people going like straight into REM sleep.
Yeah, because that's how much your body needs it, and that's
Yeah.
probably why you know
Dreams so
people,
much.
get the crazy dreams. But the thing is, not all substances are bad. Like a lot of people take caffeine, and a lot of people start taking caffeine a lot more in college.
Yeah.
Do any of you take it? Either to focus or just to even compensate for just feeling drowsy because of your sleep.
I have the terrible habit of like, well, I usually take like 2 coffees, one like at 4 p.m. and one at like 9 or 10 p.m. which is a horrible habit. But I think like I built a tolerance or something.
Yeah, I don't think it affects. And also you get good sleep, so it's not like you're feeling too drowsy.
I have a coffee per day, but it's usually in the morning at like 10 a.m.
That's the correct time. You should probably take coffee like 45 minutes after waking up. That's the best time because caffeine just have a half-life, or I think a half-life of 6 hours. So after 12 hours, there's still 25% of caffeine left in your system, which is why ideally you'd want to take it. But of course, in some cases,
and it's a combination of that. And you remember, like we also learned that, like a lot of your like the sleep cycles themselves, they're also deeply connected to like your body temperature itself.
Oh yeah.
So when you drink coffee in the mornings, like it's beneficial in 2 senses. One, you get like the actual effect of like the caffeine, but on top of that, like, well, I don't know if you drink your coffee hot, but
does it warm you up?
Exactly, like the body temperature, like when you raise your temperature, it's like when your body naturally wants to like when you wake up, like
so there's
your
like
body,
a dual stage effect. First, when when you feel the heat of the coffee,
Yeah.
and then when the caffeine kicks in, like
That's
half
really
an hour
cool.
later.
and it's like a myth, or a lot of people think like, oh, they sip the coffee and they feel like, oh, they feel way better like 5 minutes
That's just
later.
because of the heat.
Exactly, because like the
The caffeine hasn't hit.
the caffeine doesn't kick in till like 20 or 30 minutes later, right?
Yeah.
So it's like just having a warm substance, like kind of raising your body temperature. That's helping you waking up. Yeah.
That's why I always like hot coffee over cold coffee, just because I feel like, especially as soon as I immediately take it, I feel I feel great. While cold coffee, I just have to rely solely on the caffeine.
If it's a cold coffee, does it still is there still that dual effect?
Not the dual effect. Like you'll still get the the
Caffeine.
benefits of the caffeine in itself, but you won't get like the hot substance because at the end of it, like you want to warm your body temperature. Like,
Does the opposite happen before going to bed and you take?
well, but in
cold
that
water?
case, like you want to avoid like taking coffee altogether.
No, if you're taking cold water.
Oh, like
before
just
going to bed.
cold stuff. That's an interesting question.
Yeah, would your body?
I wouldn't be sure.
Because we're sleeping now.
See, from what I know from before, it's like when you have a hot shower, it makes you fall asleep quicker, but that's a separate thing because that's something related to your skin and your blood vessels. But yeah, we're not gonna go into.
We're not sure if that's.
I wanted to just finish the caffeine discussion. Like I a lot of times have caffeine. Specifically when I have like 4 hours of sleep, I just get like a big bottle, of like Celsius or something crazy. And then, the problem with that is, while actually, so how caffeine works is blocks your adenosine receptors, and adenosine is what builds up in your brain that causes you to fall asleep. And caffeine just comes in and blocks it, which is great. I mean, you will feel less sleepy. However, your brain is still sleep deprived, so it will still process information way worse than if you had like a full night of sleep. So even though you think of course, then after 3-4 hours after taking the coffee, all the adenosine that's built up will crash and will make the crash even worse. But even during those 3-4 hours when you feel like you can concentrate because of the coffee you took, your brain will still not be able to process and store the information as effectively.
And out of curiosity, like, have both of you either heard of the circadian rhythm?
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. Like adding on to what Tommy said, the buildup of adenosine, we call that like sleep pressure or process S. But like the circadian rhythm also plays like an essential role. Like everything we've been talking about, like body temperature regulation, that's kind of dictated and it follows like the patterns of the circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
But like adding on to what Tommy was saying, so when you sleep, say that on average you need 8 hours of sleep to clear all of the adenosine that you've been building up like throughout the day.
Yeah.
So like if you want to picture the curve, it's like the adenosine is constantly building up, but
Yeah.
when you fall asleep, it's just like starts like your body's like processing it, like
Yeah.
getting rid of like
And then
the
it
adenosine.
starts again.
Okay.
But then like the circadian rhythm, which is like your master biological like clock, right? It's more of like a sinusoidal like curve. It's like a sine wave, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like your perception of how tired you are, like how tired you are, is dictated by the difference between these two curves themselves. So it's interesting because a lot of people have the effect. So imagine like you want to like stay a bit late to like study, right? Or you pull an all-nighter. So your adenosine, if you don't sleep, it just
It's gonna keep
it's
going
building up.
Increasing,
It's
yeah.
building
And
up.
your
building up,
circadian
building up,
rhythm is
building
going
up.
down.
And your circadian. So that's why like in the middle of the night,
Like at 4 or 5 a.m. it's horrible because like your skin is all the way down.
or,
your
yeah,
adenosine's
roughly
going up.
like in that point of the, like 2 or 3 a.m. like you're just like you want to give up, even if you're taking caffeine, like you're tired and everything. That's because your process C, your circadian rhythm, is like in the bottom part of the curve itself. But the adenosine keeps building
Keeps
up,
up.
But then it's interesting because
Wait,
it has
will it
it
go
happened
back
to
up?
you? Yeah,
Yeah, because
Yes,
the skin
yes.
goes back up. which
It's
is
roughly
why-
like 6 a.m., 7 a.m.,
Yeah.
and you get like your
Shit.
energy, like you're
Burst of
energized.
energy.
because your process
During the
C's
all
going up.
nighter, I took did an all nighter in like 61P or whatever 2 years ago, and the whole day I was very happy. I'm
Yeah,
not
but it's
tired.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, because the process C catches up almost to the
Yeah.
S, but then when the C goes down again for the second
No,
hour,
the next
then
day,
it's
that's
royally. Yeah,
that's
you're-
when that
Yeah.
crash is horrible because
Yeah.
think about it, the
That's no
adenosine,
sleep,
it's
yeah.
just like
keeps
it
keeps going.
keeps
Yeah.
getting up.
and then
And
that's
after,
why
like,
it causes you to sleep for longer because there's a lot of adenosine to process,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
interesting.
So
Yeah.
it's like 30 hours of adenosine building up, and then like once circadian rhythm like goes down, that's when
Then
like the
the
crash,
difference
like
too
the
much.
difference is too much that like
Yeah.
you just can't resist the feeling of like
Yeah.
falling asleep, right?
Yeah, and the last thing I want to touch on is napping because we talked about like
Yeah.
adenosine buildup, and a lot of people nap because they feel a little bit drowsy or they have like the afternoon crash. Yeah, I mean, when you nap, your adenosine does go down, and also there's studies that show that if you watch a lecture or study a bit and then take a nap immediately after, you'll actually remember the stuff that you learn a lot better. Like, let me pull up the data.
Just
here.
after a nap.
Yeah, just after a nap. This has been tested on middle school people and adolescents, but it probably applies to us. Is an 83% increase after 5 days compared to people who didn't take a nap, specifically on the stuff that they learned right before the nap.
Mhm.
So in that way, naps are highly beneficial. However, of course, it also makes it much harder to fall asleep because it already processes on the adenosine.
Yeah.
So adenosine will have to start building again. But imagine taking a nap like 4 p.m. and finish a nap at 5. Between 5 and 10, not enough adenosine is built up again to cause you to feel sleepy. So
Sleep again.
That's why it's interesting. Like or a lot of people, they always suggest like taking short naps, right?
Yeah.
Like 10 to 20 minutes. Or that's one of the factors at least. Like if you sleep or if you take naps for like longer, right? Like 1 or 2 hours. Well, it's a combination of like that you're already like tearing down the adenosine, but also like that like the stages of sleep you're entering, like because when you start napping for longer, like 30, 40, like in the 40-minute mark, you're already like kind of approaching like the slow wave sleep, or like you're entering like deeper parts of sleep.
How does like a sleep deprived person taking a nap, how does that work?
It like, or I would say usually like people who are sleep deprived, like when they take naps, they are longer naps, and in that case it'd be, I'd say, like, or from a personal standpoint, if I'm like really sleep deprived because I stayed up studying and I take like a 4-hour nap, then it's like I'd say beneficial, or like it helps.
It resets your
Like it helps you like take down the.
But then if you nap for too long, your biological clock starts getting screwed because it starts thinking that, wait, why are you sleeping? Because you're supposed to be just sleeping later in the day, and if you take a long nap, then you have kind of disrupted.
And like a fact we learned in class, or it was quite interesting because, or we humans, like we've always had this perception, or at least like at this stage of our lives and for years now, like that we should only have like one long period of sleep, like 8 hours, and like that's how humans operate, right? How like society operates. But like some recent studies and some science, like some studies were conducted on like still tribal based like societies and communities, and like they naturally follow like what their body dictates, right?
Yeah.
And what they do is like they tend to sleep 6.5 to 7 hours during the night.
Oh.
But a lot of them, they like taking like sleeping for 1 hour during the afternoons,
Yeah.
and that represents. I'm not sure. I don't know if you remember this, Tommy, but it was something like to do with the cycles themselves. Like I think it was like a dip in the circadian rhythm or something that like you naturally feel tired. A lot of people have the misconception that it's because of like after lunch, like you feel tired.
Yeah.
But that effect happens regardless. Like it's something to do with like how you're biologically programmed.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that some people are questioning whether like the human is
the
naturally
most
programmed
natural
to
way
sleep.
is probably just to take a nap. So naturally, maybe taking a nap is the ideal solution.
And
right?
many cultures have naps. Like
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like something like people can argue it's like
siesta.
industrial. Siestas are quite natural. But it's like from an industrial standpoint, like people are
You don't want
always-
people working.
Okay.
and like we've noticed like even during some jobs and like in some internships, for example, over the summer, I've seen that some of the offices have like sleeping pods, and they're
Yeah.
starting to promote this culture of like taking short naps for like people to be energized and perform at their
Feel
highest.
better.
Yeah, which is quite interesting. I'd say.
Yeah, maybe we are getting back to that. Because I personally cannot nap just because, I don't know, I always struggle to fall asleep. And then when I do, then I feel like I'm more tired, and I struggle to fall asleep again. So maybe napping is just not for me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm so screwed in terms of my sleep cycle at this point that I'm beyond the point of no return. But yeah, honestly, if you can nap and then fall asleep, like if you can nap for like 15 to 30 minutes and then fall asleep normally without trouble later, then it's a great option. And it's, a study showed it will benefit your memory. Yeah. I think that's basically most of the topics we wanted to cover. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Thank you so much for your time. See you next time.